Business is down this week 28%. I'd say closer to 40% in the coming week. I mean, you can see it, there's nobody around. The other issue that people don't seem to get a grasp of, it's all very well to come and steal a snapshot of what's going on here in the area when there's a snap lockdown. I feel in some ways mainstream media is just grabbing it for a quick headline. But there's no follow-through happening right now, and I'm aware of what you guys do. But being aware of the publication that you guys came from, we'd hope that you take it a little bit further and hopefully get our message a little bit out.
Early last week, we drove to the New South Wales-Queensland border because we'd heard about a strange situation that was literally dividing a community in two. Now, it's not the most recent social justice fad that's creating the tension, but rather a political stunt that has caused a crisis. You see, the towns of Tweed Heads and Coolangatta sit on either side of an invisible line. Essentially, it can only be seen on a map. But now the government has placed a hideous string of solid barricades that have created a nightmare for the heavily intertwined communities. And we were fortunate enough to have the opportunity to speak to some of the locals on either side of the most bizarre road closure in the country. And in this segment, I want to introduce you to Sam. He's one of the owners of a hospitality business that serves the now physically divided communities.
So at the moment, it feels like the Tweed Shire essentially has had a line drawn through it on a map, and you've severed a city in half without any further attendance to that conversation and that relationship. There's hundreds of people, thousands of people displaced right now, one way or the other, and I think it's forcing a lot of people to make decisions in a really short space of time. And those decisions are not always going to be best for people long term if they're going to be asked to, for example, relocate New South Wales for job, relocate north to Queensland for personal reasons, for family, whatever that might be. Right now, as a community in this area, we just haven't been given a lot of lead time. There's not been a lot of information. The other issue is we're being asked to run a race and a marathon, and there's no end in sight. How much damage, is it going to do all of our businesses and the community in the meantime?
And like I said in the intro, this is a political blunder. And clearly, common sense has evaded the power-hungry politicians who tie the performance of a virus with the decisions they make surrounding this heavily intertwined community, which hasn't had a single case in the region. But still, Premier of Queensland, Anastasia Palaszczuk, and the Premier of New South Wales, Gladys Berejiklian, have no idea how to clean up the disaster they've created.
There's regularly a dozen cars parked up on the actual border, which is just a plastic barrier. I've seen everything from, bloods being transferred for different hospitals and pathology, tools, materials, people's children, what's actually being handed over that border if you were trying to represent a full hard border closure. You haven't even achieved that. You're not regulating that at all at the moment up there. That's a free-for-all every day. If we're not controlling that, then how effective is a hard border closure right now? So to move north and to drop into Queensland, which is about half of our client wholesale base, we went to check with Border Control the day before to say we understand this new restrictions coming in, what will happen. We couldn't get a straight answer at Border Control, so we loaded the van with about $8,000 to $10,000 worth of product the following morning at 6 o'clock to send the drivers for them to be turned around to then come back.
So just for a bit of context, it was the Queensland government that placed the physical barriers there. So you would assume the Border Force of Queensland would have been briefed on how to manage their new Berlin Wall. But as Sam said, that wasn't the case. So we thought maybe the New South Wales government was supporting the people of Tweed Heads to better understand the restrictions. So we called a local police station to see if they knew anything about the enforcement of the border closure.
If your call is in relation to the Queensland border road closures, we have no information to assist you at this time. Please refer your inquiries to Queensland Police or CMR websites. We will update our Tweed Byron Police Facebook page when we do receive relevant information. While the matter of border entry requirements from states outside New South Wales are a matter for those jurisdictions.
So this side doesn't know and that side doesn't know, but what else would we expect? But as long as these barricades stay there, it will leave thousands out of work and many displaced and an immense amount of pressure on local business owners. But the government keeps highlighting how much financial support they're dishing out, but that's not what the Australian people want. You see, we're an honest, hard-working nation, and living off welfare is not the Australian dream.
There's close to 48 staff on this side alone. 22 are displaced. They're in Queensland now. no kind of sign as to when they may be able to return to work. So our business just falls off a cliff every time they make that change. And there's plenty of people that are homeless. And I think the stats on people that are homeless right now, and they've got somewhere to live north or south, either side of the border, but they can't reach those homes right now. So effectively have decided to either stay at home and not go to work, or cross to the other side and work but not be able to return home, and they're living out of their cars.
So at this point, you'd expect the politicians to step in to clean up their mess by removing the border restrictions between these two communities. But in some sense, they have made some exemptions, but not for the people of Tweed Heads and Coolangatta on the ground, but rather the NRL players and their families flying overhead.
In a bubble, arriving by the busload. 500 NRL wives, babies, kids and girlfriends.
All the girls are just excited to get up there and see all the boys.
Transported across the border to be reunited with their players.
Yeah, quality family time. Yeah, we're excited.
They landed on the Gold Coast, the Queensland government accused of bowing to league bosses, while ordinary citizens are kept separated from their loved ones.
And as the old saying goes, rules for thee, but not for me. And while everyday Aussies make incredible sacrifices, politicians continue to colour the truth and string us along with promises they won't keep and restrictions they won't follow. But Sam goes on.
We're a business who's taking the restrictions really seriously and trying to do our best to adhere. The issue is we're going to them. We're the ones that are constantly left behind to chase for information. It should be the other way around. If you're going to be essentially moving the goalposts every 2 or 3 days or week or two, depending on what's going on with the border closure, you need to be coming to the local businesses and getting them on the front foot, because right now we're being left in the dark. We are doing what's being asked in terms of restrictions because we don't have a choice. There's numerous stories of businesses being fined $5,000 per person for not wearing a mask, and people are fed up. People have got shits. People are really frustrated by what's going on at the moment, and they're not. I just don't think people largely in the Tweed Shire, and I'd imagine our northern neighbours in Coolangatta, they're not feeling supported right now. Business is down for all of us.
Right throughout our visit to the border, we heard many stories just like Sam's. In fact, it was a recurring theme. And it's just another great reminder to shop locally and to avoid the large supermarket chains, because at the end of all of this, they're going to be fine. You see, the lockdowns have been devastating for all of us, but in particular, these barricades that are dividing the communities of Coolangatta and Tweed Heads has separated thousands of families. And in an upcoming segment, you're going to hear some of those stories.
Project came down, we did an online one, and look, there was a number every 10, 7, 9, they've all been down for a quick grab over the last couple of weeks. And maybe I'm not the best spokesperson for that. Maybe there's someone better in the community.
You're doing good, man.
But I think it'd be good to start to see some of that story getting out.
And if you agree that stories like this need to be heard, you can help out in 2 ways. Firstly, you can share this video and let's bring as much attention as we can to this war that is clearly devastating this community. And secondly, if you want to continue to help us doing the work we are doing in New South Wales, please head over to sydneyreporters.com and donate what you can so we can continue bringing you the other side of the story.